Hey, this is Tom Webster, and this is Sounds Profitable for Wednesday, August 9th, 2023. The Song of the Summer and the Joe Rogan Problem. Podcasting's most celebrated Song of the Summer moment was Serial in 2014, when promotion, content, and mainstream audience attention all aligned perfectly. In recent years, those fleeting moments motivating new people to try podcasting have largely been dominated by one polarizing figure. But first, if you want to learn what ad tech is capable of in podcasting, check out the Sounds Profitable Product Deep Dives, an in-depth walkthrough covering the latest in podcasting technology and tools. Each episode, Bryan Barletta does a full run-through of a product with someone from the product team, discussing intended use cases and what it can accomplish for users. No press releases, no marketer presentations, just the product. Catch every episode on soundsprofitable.com. In a couple of weeks, we'll debut our latest research project at Podcast Movement, and it's called The Podcast Landscape in America. This is a project I've been wanting to do for some time now. It's a large-scale survey entirely focused on the levers for audience growth and the barriers to increased podcast consumption. The findings of this project are broad-ranging and have implications for everyone from indie creators to the largest publishers and networks. I can't wait to start sharing some of these results from the keynote stage on Wednesday, the 23rd in Denver, and it's first thing in the morning, so, be good Tuesday night. Prior to that, though, I did want to get all of you thinking about something. If you look at the history of streaming TV, the growth of any one platform has never been tied to the technology or even knowledge that streaming TV as a category exists. It's always been tied to a small number of original shows. Orange is the New Black and House of Cards spurred subscriptions to Netflix. The Handmaid's Tale played a role in growing Hulu. Star Trek drove a lot of Paramount Plus users. And by the way, this phenomenon is also true in audio. You needn't look any further than the role that Howard Stern has played and continues to play in SXM satellite radio signups and retention. Podcasting as a medium had this moment with Serial, which became our first water cooler podcast. But let's be honest here. That was almost 10 years ago. Now, I'm not one of those who decry podcasting's supposed inability to create hits, but I do think it's fair to say that the medium has had a shortage of talk-about moments like the kind Serial spurred. Now, can you pin that on content? Well, partially, but not as much as you might think. There are loads of great podcasts, and we're going to make loads more, but there are also lessons here in the way that podcasts are promoted and how we talk about them. When we were all watching Tiger King at the start of the pandemic, we weren't asking each other, hey, have you tried streaming TV? It's great. No, we talked about Tiger King, all of us, for a short period of time. Tiger King was the song of the summer, and we didn't care where it was or what kind of technology carried it. We just wanted to watch it. Now, in the podcast a couple of weeks ago, I talked about some of the lessons I learned from my first real mentor in this business, Frank Cody. But the song of the summer was something I learned from Frankie Blue, the original program director for WKTU-FM in New York, the Beat of New York. When the station launched in the 90s, I did all the music research for it. It was an enormous success. Young and old listeners alike tuned in to live or relive whatever their youth was with the Beat of New York. I remember in one music meeting, I was working with the programming team on sorting through the latest research and categorizing songs, and Frankie said something very wise, which always stuck with me. Winning in New York wasn't only about consistently playing good music. It was also about winning the song of the summer. That particular summer, it was Macarena. I know. There wasn't a single person on the music team that thought Macarena was some kind of classic track that we would be listening to for years. But that summer, in Frankie's wisdom, all the girls wanted to hear Macarena, and all the guys and girls who wanted to be with those girls wanted to be where it was being played. Pretty simple stuff. So while the work I was doing with them was helping to maintain the baseline quality of the station, Frankie knew that the key to WKTU's ongoing success was to figure out the song of the summer and to own it by being the first place people think to hear of it. And Frankie was very good at spotting the song of the summer. Serial was podcasting's song of the summer 9 years ago, the song that was emblematic of an entire medium. But consider that Serial was not one of dozens or hundreds of podcasts that were carried by its home network. It was a singular brand extension from a single well-established show, This American Life. Serial was the recipient not just of cross-promotion, but the undivided attention of This American Life's promotional focus outside of the parent show. Now, today we get shows dropped every week and promoted for short periods of time or with other podcasts, but Serial didn't really have to share the stage. And I'm convinced that played a big role in getting enough talk about in a short period of time to become the song of the summer for podcasting. I recently gave some advice to a friend of mine who's put together a network of multiple podcasts covering a subject area, a topic network, basically. But he was running into the same problem that all of you have encountered, and that is, it's hard to build an audience. My advice to him was to stop promoting all of his shows and to devote his promotional and cross-promotional efforts to promoting one single flagship show, and then letting that show, in turn, promote the rest of the network. It's just hard to get people to try one thing when we're constantly asking them to try all of the things. And that's also why, when I'm asked by people who are not regular podcast listeners, I typically only recommend a handful or maybe even one of the absolute biggest and best shows. Now, if I'm asked by a typical podcast listener what other storytelling podcasts I would recommend, I'll offer a list. But for a newbie, I'm recommending The Moth. For a fan of investigative journalism, I'm recommending In the Dark. And that's it, and so on. Every new listener to podcasting judges the medium based on their entry to the medium, and we can't afford not to put our best foot forward every time. The rest will come later. I suppose I'd sum all of this up as saying that we aren't quite there yet as far as making podcasting a habit for mainstream consumers goes. We need more songs of the summer, and that requires large segments of listeners to all be talking about the same thing at the same time. And this brings me to the problem in the very title of this podcast. Podcasting has had some of those moments post-Serial, and sadly, they're often about Joe Rogan, which is not the best that we have to offer. And by the way, technically not even a podcast as far as that goes, but that is not the hill I'm going to die on today. But there he is, by light years, the most popular podcast in America, and number 2 is not even close. Talk to new people about trying a podcast and see how many respond with, oh, like Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan has put podcasting on the map in his own way, with regular emissions of effluvia that include anti-science, racism, and junk conspiracy theories. Now, I'm not saying that Rogan is a bad person. I've never met the man. But as the face of podcasting, for so many humans that have few other interactions with the medium, he's a terrible ambassador for the mainstream acceptance of podcasts. Well, there's not much I can do about that one. But there is a lesson here for both networks and individuals alike. For publishers, it may be that promotionally, you need to focus on one thing at a time for a while instead of all the things. By the way, the music industry has known this for a long time. And for those of us who talk to friends and family about trying podcasting, all I can do is to remind you of the song of the summer. That there are hundreds of shows about that one weird hobby your father-in-law has, maybe something he can come to appreciate in time. The variety of podcasting is what keeps we regulars engaged, but variety is only a benefit for those who already know and like the choices. If your job is to sell someone new to the medium, have a look at the very top shows in podcasting. See if you can't recommend just one of those, at least to start with. Like Head & Shoulders told us in their TV ads for years, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Thanks again for listening to the Song of the Summer and the Joe Rogan Problem from Sounds Profitable. This episode was built using Spooler and hosted on Art19. I'm Tom Webster, and I'll see you next week.